It's a great honor to be here today representing HIAS, which is an agency established 133 years ago as the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. Today, HIAS assists refugees of all faiths and ethnicities, but for more than a century, we were overwhelmed with rescuing Jews in need of resettlement during the periods of Tsarist pogroms, the Holocaust, World War II, expulsions from the Middle East after 1948, and Soviet communism. Since that time, HIAS programs overseas and in the U.S. have protected LGBTI refugees and asylum seekers in the Middle East, Latin America, and in Africa, as well as through programs with FEGS in New York City and Jewish Family Services of the East Bay in California. In our report, Invisible in the City, which is available on the HIAS.org website, we've highlighted refugee protection gaps faced by LGBTI refugees and asylum seekers in urban Ecuador, Ghana, Israel, and Kenya. As a community of faith, HIAS recognizes that we cannot just stand for protecting only one group of refugees, but for protecting the human rights of all refugees. And to defend the principle of refugee protection, it's most important to ensure the protection of the most vulnerable among us. Today, that group happens to be refugees who are sexual minorities, who are marginalized among the marginalized, the least protected among the least protected. Often they flee their country for one reason, and then they have to conceal their sexual identity from their host community as well as from their fellow refugees. Speaking personally, I began my career at HIAS 25 years ago preparing refugee applications in Europe for Soviet Jews. In the USSR, being Jewish was considered to be a nationality, not a religion, and the internal Soviet passport contained the infamous Pyataya Grafa, the fifth line, containing the classification Yevrei, or Jew. Jews were so discriminated against, they did everything they could to hide their fifth line, or to have their fifth line say Russian or Georgian or Uzbek, anything but Jew. They did everything they could to erase evidence of their Jewishness. They avoided synagogue like the plague. They could not study Hebrew. They forgot Yiddish. They did not celebrate Passover or Hanukkah at home, lest their children talk about it in school and get them demoted or fired from work. Why am I talking about this in a forum about LGBTIs? Because Soviet Jews, like LGBTs, did everything they possibly could to hide their identity, to deny who they were, and then when they escaped, they had to prove to countries of asylum that they were persecuted on account of this hidden identity. But proving persecution on the basis of a hidden identity proved to be very difficult for Soviet Jews, so much so that when tens of thousands fled in 1989, the INS, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, was denying 40% of their cases. The American Jewish community worked with Congress to get the law changed through what is now known as the Lautenberg Amendment, which instructed the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service on the nature of persecution against religious minorities in the USSR and instructed them to apply the refugee standard appropriately and consistently. Such an approach would not be inappropriate for LGBTI refugees today. The situation they face is very similar to that faced by Soviet Jews and other religious minorities under godless communism. The difference, however, is that unlike Soviet Jews, LGBTI refugees often do not feel safe even in their country of first asylum, where they must continue to hide who they are and to deny who they are. This fear of admitting who they are makes it difficult for LGBTI asylum applicants to file for asylum within 1 year after arrival, as has been required by law since 1996, and as the Congressman and many of my fellow panelists have already addressed. It is fortunate that the Comprehensive Immigration Bill passed by the Senate, S. 744, and the House version as well, H.R. 15, with 193 co-sponsors, would do away with the 1 year filing deadline for asylum seekers, of course, including LGBTI asylum seekers. It's up to us as people of faith to make the most vulnerable among us know that they will not be persecuted because of who they are, to ensure that the hate and the fear which they fled does not follow them into their country of asylum. We found in our study, Invisible in the City, that 44% of refugees who are LGBTI that we interviewed are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And the worst thing you can do for people like that is put them in prison, which is exactly what our detention facilities are. Thank you.